Well, welcome everyone. So this is the basics of seed saving, and it's part of the Randwick Council Eco Living Online Festival. Also a big welcome from Randwick City Council's Mayor, Danny Said, and my name is Julian Lee from Randwick Council's Sustainability Team. And I'm here with Steve Batley, one of my colleagues, and Sam Kelly, who's going to be a co-host today as well. Steve is from Sydney Organic Gardens, and he's a landscape architect and permaculture expert. Great. And we run PermaBees workshops each Friday, so gardening. So this is related to our gardening education series that's open to anybody. So I'd really like to acknowledge that the people in Randwick City.
Sorry, Julian.
Yes, Sam?
There seems to be maybe two mics that are recording at the same time.
Is it causing issues at your end?
Yeah, maybe just keep going. I'll keep a watch on it.
Sorry. Yeah, we could stop screen sharing right now. Yeah. So while we're talking. Yep.
Yep, all good.
No, there should be two recordings, Sam. One Facebook and one Zoom.
Yep, going well. All good to keep going.
So yeah, I'd like to acknowledge that the people in Randwick City Council, Randwick City area, are meeting on the land of the Gadigal and Bidjigal people who occupied the Sydney coast and were the traditional owners of this land. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands where you might be meeting today. I acknowledge and pay my respects to the elders, both past, present, and to the Aboriginal people in attendance today. If you would like to ask questions during this workshop, please write them into the chat. Steve will be checking them out for me, and he'll interrupt and butt in at good times. As you would have seen, the session is being recorded, and we'll be putting that up onto YouTube for people to learn later on. There will be a brief survey after this session just to capture your thoughts, and let's kick off, Steve.
Sounds good.
Okay, so if you can set up your screen share again.
Sure.
We'll just set that up. So we're going to that picture of all those tomatoes, gorgeous tomatoes, which really, for me, kicks off the why. Yep. And then hit share. Yep. So this is the why of saving seeds. And I guess it's because of variety. There's used to be that people ate hundreds, thousands of varieties of food, whereas now the diversity has really, really come down. And really the key way of doing it, so if we go to buy seeds at your typical store, well, there's probably just a few varieties of tomatoes that you can buy. And you know, zucchini, there might only be 2 or 3 varieties. But by saving your own seed, it's a way of really being able to start to get varieties that are adapted to your specific environment. Also, if you get one that's particularly flavoursome or has a great colour, you get to save that seed and grow that on season after season. Yeah. Any other reasons you think of, Steve?
Yeah, I think, you know, you mentioned that the number of seeds available, plants that we eat are available diminished significantly over the years. It's like it is a huge number. So we've lost at least half of our edible plants globally. Could even be more. So, you know, from that saving genetic diversity perspective, it's definitely worth collecting and saving as many different types of plants as we can, and that's something that we can do at home or in the gardens. It's exciting.
And I guess one of the things we've been particularly promoting in our PermaBee program is that diversity is important, not just for interest, but resilience. Different types of plants do well in different situations of the same variety, but also different plants put different foods back into the soil to feed different, increase the health. They do it in different ways. They put different things back in. Yeah. So that's part of what we've been experiencing and teaching and doing here in the garden at the Randwick Sustainability Hub, which is where we are now, to show that you actually don't need to use fertilisers and poisons to look after your plants and grow them really well. And diversity is a key part of that.
Yeah, and seed saving is a key part of that diversity as well. So
from generation to generation.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, saving seeds of the plants that grow really well in your garden, the obvious outcome is that the plants that grow in your garden are well suited to growing in your particular space. So
Yeah.
you should have fewer diseases and pests and issues.
Yeah. The other one that was a bit unique to this 2020 is that maybe some of you experienced that you actually couldn't buy any seeds in the stores earlier this year because there was a panic. After the panic buying of toilet paper came the panic buying of seeds. So if you're saving your own seeds, you'd have your own supply to continue on there.
Which is kind of reassuring.
Yeah, yeah.
It's good safety net.
I've got a seed bank in my apocalypse suitcase. So let's go into how, when and how. Oh, so the way this workshop's going to work, we're going to have a bit of a screen share going first so that you can really see clear pictures of what's going on and you'll hear us talking. And in the second half, what we'll be doing is actually doing demonstrations and going through it in real time of how to save seeds. So Steve, if you can progress to the next slide, just a right arrow. Cool. Yeah. So here's an example of a seed library. And so, you know, one of the exciting things that you can do with seeds, besides just in the stores earlier this year, because there was a panic, after the panic buying. Sam, if you don't just mind muting the others, please. Thank you. And so this is a great opportunity if you've got seeds. Seeds are incredible. You know, you'll almost always get ridiculous number of seeds. So you'll almost always have seeds to share. And a seed library is a great public way of doing that. Okay, next slide, thanks. So one of the questions is how and when do you collect seeds? So one of the things is you've got to know where on the plant to collect it. So these are carrot flowers. So the seeds come after the flowers, they're the mature bit afterwards. So these are carrot tops, the greens that have then turned into flowers. And then next slide. The flowers then mature into seeds, brown seeds, big juicy clumps of seeds.
Can I ask a question at this
Yeah,
point?
of course.
Yeah, I don't know if I've jumped the gun here, but back to the carrot seeds, how do you choose which carrot you let go to flower and seed?
Oh, well,
is that later?
Yeah, no. Well, it's a good. Well, carrots are actually probably particularly hard because you can't actually see the bit that you really want. Because what you typically do is you'd save your absolute best one. The one, you know, if it's coriander, you'd save seed on the coriander that's gone to seed last. If it's you know, if it's a leafy green, you want the one that's big and juicy and least, you know, have the least attack from pests.
Okay. So you pick the best one?
Pick the best one. With carrots, yeah, I'm not entirely sure because you can't see how big and juicy the carrot is under the ground.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay, yep, keep going. So I'm just going to show a few slides here of different sorts of plants, just to hook your eye into, if you haven't already, sort of the when and how and where of collecting the seeds. So this is like a leafy green. This would be like a bok choy. And then this is what it looks like later on. So you can see it looks really messy. So in a lot of gardens, people might not want to. They might chop down the plant because they're thinking, well, it just looks like a complete mess. And it does take quite a long time for the seeds to really mature on the plant. So you do need to set aside a little bit of space where you might be able to have this sort of look in your garden in order to collect seed. You got to.
Yeah. It's often, you know, as humans, we're tempted to kind of cut things down when they don't look so good. So yeah, it can be a little bit of a messy process, but knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it, it makes it easy to live with a bit of mess for a little while.
Yeah.
Another benefit of letting your plants go to flower and seed is they attract lots of good bugs. So bees and, you know, ladybugs and a lot of your pollinators and beneficial insects will be attracted to, you know, carrot flowers are awesome for attracting good bugs. So there's that benefit as well as the seed taking.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
And the good bugs eat the bad bugs.
That's right. The good bugs help you with pest management. So you have fewer of the pests if you got more of the predators, the things that eat the pests. So that's another win for seed saving.
And on that slide, you can see how, you know, the flowers and the seeds are looking pretty loose. You can imagine that actually before that too, the pollen is going to get carried through the wind. It's going to get carried through the bees, depending on the types of plants. So one of the things that you do need to think about when collecting seed is the cross-pollination, because some plants cross-pollinate really well, especially the brassicas. So we're talking about my least favourite vegetables, the Brussels sprouts, the radish, the mustards, and you can actually end up with a lack of purity. So you get sort of funny, weird hybrids between radishes and Brussels sprouts and broccolis. So with some of them, and this is not the basics, but I'm just alerting you to now, you need to keep those plants separate.
Yeah, particularly if you want to collect seed and have almost the same plant as you started with.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, and so, you know, for me, just don't grow Brussels sprouts at all. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So this is what lettuce looks like as it's going to seed and going to flower. So it really elongates. We get plenty of questions saying, what's happened to my plant? Well, this is the natural process of getting the flowers up high, so it's got the maximum chance to spread its pollen and get lots of genetic diversity. Yeah.
Interesting.
Thanks. Okay, so let's start with, we're going to look at two different types of seed collection: dry seed collection and wet seed collection. Wet seeds are in like tomatoes, you know, nice and juicy inside. But here we've got a gorgeous photo of a sunflower head. You can see all the kernels are really plump. You can't, if you pick seeds too early, they won't have matured inside, and they won't be viable seeds when you go to put them in the ground. So you need to really look for big, juicy seeds, and that's a matter of experience too, and asking other people that do know, and hooking your eye in. So here's big, juicy kernel. This is about as easy it gets for seed collection, because you can push on. Thanks. So the flowers were on top. You can see all you need to do is brush those green dead flower bits off, and you're left with the kernels underneath. And then to get the kernels, you simply get your thumb in and just push them out, pop them in a bag. Too easy. And of course, if you husk them, take the shell off those seeds, then that's the bit, the sunflower seed that you eat inside. It's the inside bit. Okay. Yeah.
I was just saying, a big sunflower like that, you know, I don't know how many seeds are in there. There must be hundreds. So it's not, you know, it's quite a nice process. So it's one seed for the envelope and one seed for you. So you just kind of have a bit of a feed as you're going along.
Yeah, nice. Not all seeds are going to be as easy as those for sunflowers. So here we have, it's actually a soil sieve, and we'll be showing you how to use one a bit later on. But you can also easily use it for sifting seeds. So it's got three meshes inside of different sizes. And what you do is you select the size according to the seeds. You know, you want the chaff, the rubbish that you don't want to keep, to stay on top, and the seed to fall through. Okay. And remember, we're going to do this in real in just a moment. So that was dry seeds. We're now going to look at wet seeds. You can see the seeds inside that tomato. It's in liquid. It's actually a gel. And the gel is designed, it's actually, it's got antimicrobial properties, and it's also got anti-germination properties. So it prevents the seed from germinating. So if you want to have the greatest chance of success of planting your seed out and for it to sprout next time, next generation, then there's a little trick around fermenting that gel off. So you cut the tomato open, you scoop out the seeds. As you can see here, they're scooping out the seeds into a glass jar, filling it with water. And you can see here that the seeds are just floating in water. And you leave that for a few days until you get a bit of a scuzz on top. It's official term, scuzz. It's fermenting away, and that fermentation process breaks down the protective gel around the seed. Then you pour off the water, and with the, still slightly wet seeds, you put it on a paper towel and let it dry out until it's like this. then you just sort of flake it off into your bag. So I might just stop for a second. Are there any questions in the chat or from the Facebook?
Okay, question from Facebook. The spinach seeds harvested from the previous season got skins outside and are sharp. Can we grow these directly, or do we need to remove the outer skin first? And another question, why do the seeds not germinate?
Okay, I'll answer the second one first. So I'm assuming that question is around, well, I'm hoping it's around the tomato question, around wet seeds and that gel. It's the reason why there's that gel is it's actually protection for the seed so that it carries over through the winter and is still viable until the next season. That's my understanding of why it has the protective gel. And over that amount of time, you know, enough rain, enough soil will have done the same thing as what we're doing in just a few days by fermenting it.
Yeah, it's interesting. So there's another question. Can you plant the tomato seeds immediately, or do you need to dry them and kind of treat them first?
Well, I guess you can. You've had it. So Steve here hasn't fermented before and he's had success. So, you know, like this is nature. It wants to live.
And I think the process of fermenting in a jar replicates the process of fermenting of what happens in the soil. So once the seed comes in contact with the soil and it's warm enough, you know, I guess the microbes and the bacteria in the soil do the job of the fermenting and breaking down that goo. So yeah, you know, there are some tomatoes that you can't not grow, like the cherry tomatoes. You could just squeeze them on the ground and you'll have cherry tomatoes for the rest of your life. But if you want to store them and save them, the fermenting, I guess, is the way to go. Fermenting and drying to save them for next year.
And I suspect also, especially with some of the more interesting, finicky heirloom varieties.
That'll be worth it.
And that's probably why the ones we see in the supermarkets, you know, your cherry, your pear, and your big round ones, are the ones that we have because they're prolific. But you know, there's something really exciting about growing your own, and that's another thing. Part of the reason we don't get some of these other interesting varieties is because they're difficult to transport. So if they're grown en masse, long way away, and they're super soft like some of the heirloom varieties of tomatoes, they just can't get them to us before they've disintegrated just because of the jiggling in the truck. But if you've got your own seeds, you can grow it in your own garden.
Yeah.
It only has to get from your backyard into your salad.
Yeah. And the other question about was it beetroot or?
No, the spinach seeds.
Spinach.
I'm going to have to apologise because I don't know the answer to the spinach seed question.
Yeah, I've heard with things like spinach, silver beets, I guess they're different but similar, and beetroot, you can soak them for 24 hours in warm water. Just put them in warm water and let them soak for 24 hours, and that helps break down that tough skin, and it helps the seed start the process of germinating. So it's kind of the other end of the spectrum where, you know, they're easy to save because they're dry and tough. And then when you want to grow them, it's the process of soaking them so that they'll germinate.
Okay. Any more questions come through?
There's
Lots. Okay.
Pumpkins. So lots of detailed questions. How do you treat pumpkin seeds?
I found you can just, you know, they're like your cherry tomato. You can just clean them up.
Clean them, dry them, put them somewhere to dry on a plate for a little while on a bit of paper towel, and then put them in an envelope.
In an envelope, yeah, a little box. Yeah, I guess we're about to go into how to store and label and that sort of thing. But any more questions that?
Bruce has got lots of questions about native plants.
Bruce, I'm sorry. What I'd recommend there on natives, we're a bit more on the food, veggie, fruit side of things than the natives. And there's quite a lot of specialist knowledge around the natives. So I know, for example, like you need to scarify, I think it's wattle seeds, which means, you know, you need to either put them, heat treat them, or you need to put them in the freezer before they'll germinate. But beyond that, you've maxed me out. Yeah, do we want to, well, could we perhaps, what we might do is we'll just quickly do off the last few slides in the screen share, and then we'll come back to us, and if there's more questions, we can go through them. So that's okay with you.
Karen had a question, but where should you store your seed envelopes? We'll get to.
Yeah, we'll get to
We're
that.
right onto that.
Okay,
Right.
so you've got your seeds. Quite often you won't be re-sowing them until next season, and unless you're super familiar with them, or even if they're of the same variety, like seeds, like all the brassicas have basically the same looking seed. So if you're like me, I want to know that the Brussels sprouts are in some other box somewhere else, and I know which of my broccoli, because I can eat them. So it's really handy, obviously, to put some critical information on your seed packet. Here's an example, the one on the left, super simple, 4 things. What is it? The particular variety, when you harvested it, because seeds eventually become unviable, and that's partly depending on depends on the type of seed, type of plant, but also how well you've harvested and stored it. And, oh, well, they've got a use-by date, so they've got a bit of sense. You can Google the average viability of seeds. But you can go crazy and put heaps more information on. Unique seed identifiers you can put in, whether it's a root, like if you're doing crop rotations or trying to create guilds. Is it a root, a fruit, a leaf, or a flowering?
Or legume.
Yeah, or a legume. You know, so if we go on to the next slide, thanks, Steve. Yeah. Maybe click on the page. Yay, okay. So here's a box with, you know, all the seeds in their packets, beautifully labeled. But here what they've done is on the left-hand side, they've just put all the seeds that are in season for planting right now on the left, and all the ones that aren't ready to plant, you know, it's the wrong season for them. They might be winter ones on the right. And that makes it really easy. Just pick anything out of that left-hand side and start planting. Obviously, you can get more technical than that. Got a thought there, sir?
Oh yeah, whatever system works, I guess, for your style of gardening and the way you do it. But yeah, that box nice and organised, you know, so to make it easy for yourself. We did have a question from Asaman. Can we turn the birds down? Sorry about the bird noise.
The birds, yeah. Come on, birds. That's hopefully one of the nice things about outside is we're outside, and you know we'll get to show you a demonstration. But yes. I will mention, just so you can feel positive about the bird noises, bird surveys at the Randwick Environment Park show that we have either the highest or one of the highest numbers and diversity of small bird species in Sydney. So you're hearing good things, even though most of those noises you can really hear are the big birds. Yeah, but that's an exciting thing. So let's move on to the next slide. Thanks, Steve. Okay, so back to seed libraries. I'm sure you've seen street book libraries. Well, exciting concept coming out is street seed libraries. And here in the Randwick Permaculture Garden, we're about to set one up in the next little while, certainly in the next season. And we've also established partnerships with Transition Bondi and with the Randwick Community Organic Garden Group to share our seeds. And what that allows us to do is we can agree that we'll grow one variety and they can grow another variety and they can keep that pure. You know, we don't have to grow all 3 varieties here. We can grow one variety here and then share the seed with your friends, with your neighbours. Another great spot for this sort of thing is Grow It Local. Highly recommend that you sign yourself up to Grow It Local, where you can share ideas and food and compost with each other. It's a fantastic platform for getting to know other gardeners in your area. Which reminds me of the last time we did this seed workshop, Steve. There was a question around F1 hybrids. If you buy seeds from a seed shop, if it has F1 on it, it stands for filial one, right?
Does it?
F was for filial, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, F1 means it's been so hybridized that it's actually sterile. It'll give you the genetic diversity of the seed is very narrow, so you'll get exactly what they say. When you plant that seed, it'll be exactly what you want, but it's a sterile seed. You cannot collect the seeds off F1 hybrid plants.
And just one step back, what's a hybrid?
Oh, so it's different to genetic engineering, which we hear a lot about now. in that it's the natural selection of, or also intervened, but it's not done at the microbial level, where you get two plants. If you've got one that's, you know, a fantastically big pumpkin, and you've got a pumpkin that's also resistant to fungus, and you manage to cross the pollen from those together, the idea is that you're hoping to get a really big fungus-resistant pumpkin. So that's the hybridization, and farmers have been doing this forever. So that's a, you know, a well-known process. Where we start to head into other territory is where you do that to such a high degree that you effectively get a field sterile. Okay, so I think we're just about on our last slide. You don't just muting, thank you. So just back to the beginning, seed saving is awesome. It's really fun. Gives you a whole new insight into growing plants. Incredibly satisfying. And at the end of the day, you get plants that are, if you do it over generations of plants, you get plants that are exactly the way you want them. Select for the flavour, for the size, for the colours, the diversity that you're after. So, how are we going for time? Okay. 10:30. Great. Perfect timing. So let's see. Let's take a few questions, and then we'll go into demonstration over here. Let's take 2 more questions. While you're looking for questions, the other thing is store your seeds. Ideal conditions for storing seeds. We go. The ravens are going crazy. Dry, so they don't get mouldy. Not too hot, so they don't desiccate. And so cool, dry, and dark. Because again, UV and sun can reduce their lifespan as well.
So a couple of questions around hybrids. One question, are most seedlings hybrids? And the other question, are most, you know, if you bought a pumpkin from a tomato or whatever, tomato from a supermarket and saved the seed, is that likely to be a hybrid as well? How do you know? I guess the question is, how do you know where to get non-hybrid seeds from?
That's probably a question, because obviously they don't come labelled. Seedlings might have F1 on them. But I guess if you buy certified organic, they won't be F1 hybrids. So if you buy if you buy certified organic produce, that's a really great place to start for getting your initial seed. You'll also know that it's been grown in really great conditions.
Yeah, and there's a thing. There's seed companies that sell non-hybrid heirloom varieties of seeds, so old-fashioned varieties that you can still source that are disappearing because they're not viable for supermarkets. So that's another source as well. If you go to those places, a lot of them are online. Yeah, so you can actually get non-hybrid. Yeah.
There's quite a few companies to Google, you know, heirloom and non-hybrid, and also the Seed Savers Network is a great not-for-profit that connects all of us seed savers together, and you know, just people in their homes. Doesn't have to be a big library, and you can get fantastic varieties and start off your seed collection that way.
One question about for all plants, can you plant straight after drying, or does it have to be wintered first? I think I've heard that people put seeds in the fridge.
Look, it goes back to when is the plant, you know, what's the season for that plant. If you've managed to collect seed and it's still the season for growing that plant, then you can put it straight into the ground. People put, I think, seeds in the fridge just as a very cool place to store their seeds.
Yeah, they last longer. Yeah.
Yeah, just like fresh food. Yeah. What do you reckon? Should we do the demo?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So, what we're going to start with is the dry seeds. And, okay, yeah, oh great, that's like a monitor. Fantastic. So, we've been collecting seeds from the Ramwick Permaculture Garden, which is just over behind you guys. for quite a long time, and we've got these fantastic. Oh yeah, yes, thanks. Steve's just pick it up and come close. Okay, so I'm going to start with some. Oh no, you can just pick the whole thing up on the tripod. So these are a large pod. They're a pea seed. Great, and hopefully you can see here. Yep, that's great. The sieve here has got large holes. What I'm going to do here is put that size mesh in. This is only slightly more technical than sunflowers, and I'm actually just going to crush the pods. Right. Pods are being crushed just to let the actual pea seeds out. Scrunch all them around, and then what you've got here, what you've got here is the pea seeds that come through, and that is easy enough to then, what we've got here is just from the newsagents. You can grab a envelope and just pop them in, and then write your details on the front. Because we do this relatively often, we've got a stamp even. Okay, so that's the chaff that you can just toss behind you and becomes compost.
Soil. Just a comment on that method. That's they're pigeon peas, and I went through the process of harvesting pigeon pea seeds some time ago to make a curry, and it took me forever. I was picking each individual seed out of the pod, so I wish I'd known about this sieve method. It saves a lot of time.
Sieves are fantastic. So this is a soil sieve. So there's 3 different sizes that you typically get: really fine, medium, and large. We're going to show you here is a different one, slightly more technical. This feels like a cooking show. What I'm going to do here, okay, I'm just going to clear this out because we had a bit of confusion in the last one. Okay, I'm going to start with the medium-sized sieve, which in this case will be the big sieve. And we have got carrot seeds. Bit mingy here. Apologies for that, because as you saw in the pictures, the carrot heads are actually typically really big and masses of seeds. But you see here, so I'm just sieving that out like that. I'm going to give it a bit of a crush, but not too much because you don't want it all going through. And then this goes on the garden again. And you can see down here, so that really most of the big, and sometimes you have to do this a few times, you can see here that now we've reduced out the really big sticks. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to put the fine sieve in. Put these in. The good news here is that I know that in this case it's actually the seed that's going to be left behind, and the tiny bit of chaff that we don't want is actually finer than the seed. So all this bit in here, that's actually just sort of dust that we don't want. And what we've got left on top, almost like little ticks, they're actually the carrot seeds. So this is now, and still there's a few sticks, but I think that was acceptable to go into my bag. So yeah.
Do you want to point exactly at that seed?
Okay, so here we go. There's six seeds there. This thing here is a stick. There's a little bit of rubbish in there, but that's okay. Okay, now here we go. Here's what I reckon is probably the hardest. So these are our lettuce seeds. Lettuce seeds are very fine. And so the tricky thing is they actually don't sieve very well. So, and I'm not great at this. And you watch the wind come up and take them all away. But a way of doing this is, can you see, actually there's just enough wind that as I'm doing this, you may not be able to see, but I'm getting a whole lot of the dust in my face, and the slightly heavier seeds are ending up in the tray. And then you keep doing that. So, okay, it's now all over me. It's slightly cleaner. Pop it back in the container and do it again. And you just keep doing that until you've got to the level of cleanliness that you're happy with, and also that you think will not result in the seeds sort of getting moldy or anything like that. So already, and another way is I'm just sort of, is this winnowing? Is that what winnowing is? Anyway, I'm sort of just bouncing it, and because there's a bit of wind here, every time I bounce, a bit more of the dust blows away. And now you might be able to see, oh, especially up here. See, that's a lot of lettuce seed that's actually quite pure. We've done quite well. We're both quite impressed with ourselves. So keep bouncing it with a bit of wind, and it'll get purer and purer. Okay. So yeah, there we go. Happy with that?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. I'll put this in here so it doesn't just all blow away while we're doing something else. Good thing about lettuce seeds is that you get millions of them. So if you lose a few in the process, that's fine. Okay. Oh. So yeah, all of that goes. Here's an example of a seed box. So just a metal box. Just keeps. The other thing for seeds, especially for farmers, is keeping them vermin-proof. Because seeds are a great source of food. So we can just store our different seeds in these boxes. Okay, let's move on to wet seeds. So that was three different dry seeds, big, medium and small, and different ways of dealing with that. And now we're going to get on to wet. So we got a tomato. And then all you do, I think I'm gonna crouch for this one, Steve. All you do is split it in half. And then you can see here, hopefully, the seeds just like in the picture. And if I get my finger into it, I'm hoping, especially if I perhaps put against the green, you'll probably all be familiar with the gel that's around the seed. So, grab your jar, get your spoon. Oh, this was a tomato bought from a major supermarket, and look, it's not full of juicy seeds. There we go. It's. I guess we are. It's only spring, so fair enough as well. So I'm just getting in there, trying to scoop out as many of the seeds as I can. Not too. Don't worry about the flesh. Anyway, getting back in there, just scooping it. Getting this bit over here. There. Okay, there we go. There's little seeds there. Now, plonk a whole lot of water in, maybe a bit more. Put the lid on. Okay, give it a shake just to help it. And you can see it, you can see or you can imagine it's starting to get murky. And that's the gel coming off. But if we then leave that for a few days, as we said, it gets scuzzy on top because it's starting to ferment And that's breaking down that protective gel, which we don't need because we're going to store it carefully in a dry, cool, dark place. So, okay, let's imagine, leap forward a few days, we've got the scuzz, and, you know, in your kitchen sink, just get your hand, the scuzz, you could probably, you know, scoop off like that. Then the rest of it, oh, not our dry seeds, the rest of it, you just pour off the water. And, you know, a sieve or something like that might work well. And just gonna get rid of a little bit more water. Now, of course, we haven't fermented it, so all this big chunky stuff would be gone. You put it down on a bit of paper towel and let it dry out. Once it's dried out, like you saw in the previous picture, then you pop it in your bag and say either put them in your ground or put it in your bag for next season. Okay, so that's the demo part. We're all good for some questions. So yeah, do you want to pop it here, Steve? And then just grab the laptop. Just check any questions. Okay, here we go.
Questions. How long can seeds be stored for and remain viable?
Different seeds, different plants, different varieties, different collection methods, different storage methods, all affect the viability. So what you can do, the Seed Savers Network have a beautiful book called the Seed Savers Manual or Handbook, and it's actually got lots of varieties of plants, very specifics on how to save the seed for that particular plant and how long the viability is. But they're all different.
A couple of questions about where you would buy sieves from.
Sieves, online.
Yep.
Just so the key thing there is it's a soil sieve. That's what I actually put in, seed sieve, and what I came back with was soil sieves. So there's soil sieves and a set of 3 because you want 3 different sizes.
Yeah. When you're doing when you did the light seeds with the wind, can you just go and kind of blow?
You can.
Yep.
You might get faint. We didn't get to tell the story of you in China.
Oh, just yeah.
I like it because you know it speaks to that can be a bit of a tedious process.
Yeah. So years ago, I went to China and stayed in a little village, and they grew lots of corn. And we were walking around, and there was an old couple feeding corn cobs into this machine, and I think there was a big hand crank and like a big belt and these things spinning around, and the machine kind of took the grains off the corn, and then it went through, sort of dropped down this chute, and the fan blew all the gunk away, and then it went into this pot of thing. So it was just really interesting watching this process. It was lots of fun, and yeah. So it's this is what happens. This is what people do, to grow food. So
Yeah.
they got to be cranky with us after a while. I think they were working hard, and we were just painful tourists just watching. But it was a really cool kind of funky thing to see.
So it automated the sort of the crushing, the blowing, the separating.
Yeah.
Because they would need to save enough corn seeds to grow the crop for next year.
That's right. Yeah.
Cool.
Does the glass jar need to be sterilized?
Dishwasher would be fine. Wash a clean glass jar would be fine.
Yeah.
If we're talking about laboratory conditions, yes, but we're not. The good thing about gardening is a lot of it can be done pretty hands-on, like we just did.
Shanghai had a question. Do we need to store the seeds in an airtight container? I have a thought on this.
Yeah.
I think it's actually better not to be airtight, because if there is some moisture still in the seed, you want that moisture to be able to dissipate. Otherwise, you could get moldy and fail. So yeah, I think you want it to be able to breathe so it can dry out completely.
I think if you're commercial and had incredible setup, then airtight might be the way to go, but not for us.
Yeah. question from Ellen. Is it better to wait longer to collect the seeds, or can they get too old on the plant? Really good question.
Yeah, good question, isn't it? I guess with a lot of growing and farming and this sort of thing, it's always a balancing act, isn't it? You know, if you leave it too long, they may rot or disintegrate on the plant. And the other thing is that they're a good source of nutrition. So birds, insects, other things might just come in and eat them.
Mm.
So
yeah, or they just drop off, or they blow away, or whatever. Yeah.
The next generation, yeah. So I guess it's a case of really getting familiar with when they're mature and grabbing them then.
Mm. And I think it's a really important point to know when. Like, how do you know when they're mature? That's the.
So I guess it's gardening, isn't it? You know, and asking other people, seeing them, looking at them.
Yeah, and one way that you can tell, if you've got, this is a pigeon pea seed pod. I don't know if you can hear that. It's kind of like a little rattling sound, and it's really dry and brown. So if you have a pod that's like that, the seeds will be ready because it's fully dry, fully mature. If it's a little bit green, or if you can't feel the seeds or hear the seeds kind of shaking around in the pod, maybe wait a little bit longer until it's ready. And as you get more into seed saving, what some people do, things like lettuce seeds, because the lettuce presents the seed up really high, like Julian was saying, and the flowers open up, and each seed has a little parachute attached to it, and they're designed to blow away in the wind. So if you leave them too long, they'll be gone before you get them. Some people put a bag, like a paper bag, around the flower head when it's just before it's about to launch, and tie it off, and then the seeds just automatically fall into the bag. You collect the bag, and away you go. So there's lots of different ways to do it. That's one that I know. And
yep, just at the bottom here.
So check the time.
Yep. No, sorry, because it's covered up by Zoom.
Yeah.
Excuse us.
The time. What is it?
Oops.
Yeah. So look, there's a lot to seed saving, yeah.
Yeah. This is the beginning, just the basics to get us going.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do have time, so keep asking questions and we'll do our best. I guess this is a great plug for our PermaBee program. Every Friday we have the gardening here. We've got a fantastic food forest orchard and veggie garden, and you'll see the plants going to seed, and we actually roughly once a month actually go through and spend time collecting seed, processing them, and getting our eye into them.
Yeah. And we're just about to get a propagation shed.
Oh.
It's really exciting. So then we'll have the full cycle. We'll be able to plant the seeds, plant them in the garden, watch them grow, save them, collect them for next year. So if you're really interested in this process, yeah, come along and do it.
Yeah.
All right. The beds and oh, kale. So someone had a question about kale, collecting kale seeds.
Uh-huh.
What is the question? The process of collecting seeds from a kale plant.
Oh.
Kale's a brassica.
Kale's a brassica, so it's got the tiny little pods with the little round brassica seeds. Be relatively straightforward to collect them. Just, let it go to flower, let it mature off. The pods will go brown. Like Steve said, they'll rattle. Just crush them and become they'll pop out. The tricky thing with kale though is that because it's a brassica, if you've got any other brassicas, it'll cross-pollinate and become some
hybrid.
It'll
become a hybrid.
It'll become a hybrid, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah.
It'll be some weird kale, mustard,
which could be awesome.
Brussels sprout thing.
The new founder of the new kale.
Yeah.
You
like them a lot more.
Yeah. Question about the pumpkin seeds, because they have that sticky coating around them. Are they difficult to dry? Not really. Just take them out of the pumpkin, clean all that goo off. It almost peels off to a clean seed, I've found.
Yeah.
And pop them on a bit of paper towel in a warm, not sunny spot, but a warm, airy spot, and they'll dry in a few days to a week. Yeah.
Big seeds are easy because they're not only physically easy to handle, but they're often not very technical.
Yeah. question, where is this session being filmed?
Oh, we are at the Randwick Sustainability Hub, which is at 27 Munda Street in Randwick. It's an amazing place. We have demonstration gardens for gardening, for orcharding, for bush tucker, native habitat, and we have 3 different options for community gardening here. And we do that every Friday, 9 o'clock to 12:30. And behind us is actually the Randwick Environment Park, which is something like 13 hectares of amazing bushland, which is also why we have the incredible, uniquely diverse set of small bird species on site.
Mm. Yeah, it's a really cool place. It's an oasis. Like, people come here and go, wow, I didn't know this place was here. So come down.
Well, I'll just do a quick scan for all of you. Let's see. Okay, so over there we have our native habitat garden. This is our big oval. We've got a hall. And over that way is the food forest and veggie garden. And this is our sustainable outdoor classroom.
And Alan says, secret garden, shush, shush.
No, we invite all of you to come down and learn and do. And the people that come gardening here, fantastic crowd, aren't they? We love working with the community here.
Lots of frogs too.
Lots of frogs, yeah.
And even more excitingly, a coffee van just turned up. So hopefully we'll be able to make that a regular event as well.
Yeah, yep. And I might do a plug now while I'm thinking of it. Stick around, or you'll need to register on Eventbrite, because at 11:30, Steve is doing on how to build a wicking bed. So a wicking bed is?
It's like a giant self-watering pot. So if you've got a raised garden bed for growing veggies and you want it to be really water efficient and you want your plants to grow really well and you want to save water, you can turn it into a wicking bed. And it's quite easy. It's a bit of a process. There's a bit of cost, but we've got wicking beds set up here down in the back paddock, and they hardly ever get watered. And even through the heat of last summer, maybe with watering once a week, the plants grew really well.
No,
they got nothing.
They got no water,
wow,
and vegetables were growing in them,
yeah.
whereas everything else was turning to desert.
Yeah. So if you're into growing veggies and you want them to grow well, a wicking bed is a really good solution. So we're going to show you how to do that.
Yeah.
In half an hour or so.
Yeah. So yep, register for that. Any more questions on seed saving that we can answer?
Okay, whoa, here's a good one. What does it mean if you collected a seed pod and it is empty?
Oh, what it means is it didn't get fertilized. No boy bits got to the girl bits.
So some plants self-pollinate. Some plants need insects to get the pollen from one flower to another to make the seed grow. So if it's empty, it could be that it was a hybrid initially, or it could be that it's not getting pollinated. So maybe a solution could be planting more flowers to attract more bees to get more pollination.
Yeah. And that's made me think, actually, the question that we often get is, people might have grown zucchinis, and it happens with pumpkins and things like that. This is slightly, related. But, you'll get the pumpkin or the zucchini starting to grow, and that just withers, just sort of, it never develops into the full fruit. And that's for that reason, not the sterile reason, but the flower never got pollinated. So no pollen got to the female flower in order for the ovaries to develop, around which the fruit grows. So the plant says, well, there's no point, there's no viable seed in there, don't grow the fruit around it. And the way one way to resolve that is more insects, so more flowers, more diversity in your garden. But in the meantime, you can get a paintbrush out and you can brush it with the pollen and then brush it onto the female flower. You can have success with human pollinating.
You just have to make buzzing noises.
Yeah.
Is it a good idea to collect seeds from multiple plants for genetic diversity?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe we talked about, just picking the healthiest, biggest one, or the one with the characteristics that you want to kind of have going into your next generation, but maybe maybe you pick 4 or 5 or 6 of your best and do it that way.
Yeah. So it just depends on how big your garden is, how much space you've got for all of this. So one's your minimum, but if you can collect them from more, then more diversity and more redundancy.
And Alan had another point. Maybe the bugs ate the seeds in the empty pod, so that can happen as well. So not sure if Julian covered this, but if people are interested in the next session, where do they go to register? I think.
So you can, wherever you went to register for this one, if you go back to there, but if you go to Randwick Council's website, actually, Sam, would you mind putting a link to it in the chat function for everyone, please? But in case he wasn't able to, go to Randwick Council's website or Google Eco Living Online and just search for how to build a wicking bed. Along similar lines, in the gardening stream, we have tomorrow, we've got Costa and I are building a hot compost heap together. And then we've got Daryl from Grow It Local talking about how to turn your garden into a side hustle, meaning, a bit of the sharing economy. And then in the afternoon, we've got Jess Perini talking about an introduction to permaculture principles over at the Randwick Community Organic Garden.
How are we going for time? We got time for a couple more?
Let's check it out.
There is one.
Oh, we got time for one more question.
Oh, okay, so how do I find seed saver groups in my area?
Go Seed Savers Network and or Grow It Local.
And we got a question about slugs in a worm farm, but we might have to.
That might be a bit off topic.
Yeah.
We might wrap it up there, huh?
Yeah, that's. And will there be recording or notes available on this?
Yes. Okay. So as soon as we press stop here, this video is available on Facebook. Go to Randwick Council's Facebook page and go to the video section. It'll be there. It'll obviously be unedited. All the stuff at the beginning. But then ultimately, this is also being recorded on Zoom, and we'll put it on Randwick Council's YouTube channel, so it'll be there as well. But that'll take us a little while before we get that onto YouTube.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Julian.
Always fun. We'd love to have you join us down here in the garden because it's a great place, as you can see, and we have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And we learn lots.
Yeah. Come along.
Cool.
All right.
See you, everyone.
See ya.
Hope to see you in the next one.